Marcus Thompson had been living peacefully in the small town of Cedar Falls for 3 years. Nobody knew about his past as a Navy SEAL. To his neighbors, he was just a friendly guy who ran the local hardware store and helped elderly Mrs. Henderson with her groceries every Tuesday. The 34-year-old veteran preferred it that way. After 8 years of dangerous missions in Afghanistan and Iraq, he had earned his quiet life. His days were filled with simple pleasures: morning coffee on his porch, organizing inventory at the store, and evening walks through the peaceful neighborhood streets. Marcus had deliberately chosen Cedar Falls because nothing ever happened there. The biggest news in months was when the high school football team made it to the regional championships. Crime was practically non-existent, and the most excitement the local police dealt with was the occasional speeding ticket or noise complaint. But that Tuesday evening in October changed everything. Marcus was closing up his hardware store around 7 p.m. when he heard shouting from across the street. Through his front window, he could see 3 men in dark clothing surrounding a young woman near the town's only bank. The woman was clearly terrified, her hands shaking as she fumbled with something at the ATM. His military training kicked in immediately. Marcus recognized a robbery in progress. The men weren't just asking for directions or having a casual conversation. Their body language, the way they positioned themselves to block escape routes, and their aggressive postures all screamed danger. The woman, who looked to be in her early 20s, was clearly being forced to withdraw money from the ATM. One of the men kept looking around nervously while another stood directly behind her, obviously giving threatening instructions. The third man acted as a lookout, positioned where he could see approaching cars or pedestrians. Marcus felt his pulse steady rather than quicken. This was familiar territory for him, even though he was thousands of miles from any battlefield. The same calm focus that had served him during countless dangerous operations overseas now filled his mind. He quietly moved to the back of his store where he kept a small safe. Inside was his service pistol, a Sig Sauer P226 that he had maintained meticulously despite hoping he would never need it again. His hands moved with practiced efficiency as he checked the weapon and holstered it under his jacket. Marcus had 2 choices: call the police and hope they arrived in time, or intervene himself. The nearest police station was 15 minutes away on a good day. The woman didn't have 15 minutes. He stepped outside his store, keeping to the shadows as he assessed the situation more carefully. The 3 men appeared to be in their 20s or early 30s. They were agitated, constantly moving and checking their surroundings. This suggested they were amateurs, which made them more dangerous because their actions would be unpredictable. The woman at the ATM was crying now. Marcus could see tears streaming down her face as she repeatedly tried to access her account. One of the men was growing impatient, gesturing aggressively and speaking in harsh whispers that Marcus couldn't quite hear from his position. As Marcus moved closer, staying in the shadows between parked cars, he could finally make out some of their conversation. "Come on, lady. Stop playing games and get the money out." The man behind her was becoming increasingly hostile. "I'm trying. The machine says I've reached my daily limit," the woman pleaded. "That's not our problem. Figure it out, or we'll figure it out for you," another man threatened. Marcus was now close enough to see that at least one of the men had a weapon. The bulge under the jacket of the man, acting as lookout, was unmistakably a handgun. He assumed the others were armed as well. This was the moment when his SEAL training truly took over. Years of high-stress situations had taught him to remain calm, assess threats quickly, and execute plans with precision. He was outnumbered 3-1, but he had several advantages: surprise, superior training, and the element of righteousness on his side. The woman's situation was becoming more desperate by the minute. The men were growing increasingly agitated, and Marcus knew from experience that agitated criminals often made fatal mistakes, fatal for their victims. He positioned himself behind a parked truck about 20 feet from the group. From here, he could see all 3 men and had a clear path to the woman if he needed to get her to safety quickly. The streetlights provided enough illumination for him to identify threats, but also created shadows he could use for cover. Marcus took a deep breath and made his decision. He had spent years fighting to protect innocent people overseas. He wasn't about to stop now, especially when the innocent person was right in front of him and clearly needed help. The woman suddenly stumbled backward as one of the men grabbed her arm roughly. "Maybe we need to take you somewhere more private to help your memory," the man snarled. That was Marcus's signal to act. The situation had escalated from robbery to potential kidnapping, and he wasn't going to let that happen on his watch. He stepped out from behind the truck, his hand resting calmly on his concealed weapon. "Evening, gentlemen. Is there a problem here?" The three men spun around, startled by his sudden appearance. The woman looked at Marcus with a mixture of hope and terror, unsure if he was there to help or if the situation had just gotten worse. "Mind your own business, old man," the nearest robber growled. "Keep walking if you know what's good for you." Marcus smiled slightly, an expression that his former teammates would have recognized as dangerous. "Actually, I think this is my business." The lady seems upset. The men exchanged glances, trying to decide how to handle this unexpected complication. They had planned for security cameras, police patrols, and uncooperative victims. They hadn't planned for a calm, confident stranger who showed no signs of fear despite being outnumbered. "Last warning, buddy. Walk away now, or you're going to regret it," the leader of the group threatened, taking a step toward Marcus. "I've regretted a lot of things in my life," Marcus replied conversationally. "But helping someone in trouble has never been one of them." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. The woman sensed something significant was about to happen, even though she had no idea that she was watching a highly trained former Navy SEAL prepare for combat against three amateur criminals. What happened next would change all of their lives forever and remind everyone involved why Navy SEALs are considered among the most elite warriors in the world. The leader reached into his jacket for his weapon, confident that the appearance of a gun would send this interfering stranger running. He had no idea that he was about to learn a very hard lesson about the difference between carrying a weapon and knowing how to use it effectively. Marcus watched the man's hand movement with the same calm attention he had once used to track enemy combatants in urban warfare scenarios. Time seemed to slow down as his training took complete control. The peaceful evening in Cedar Falls was about to become anything but peaceful. The leader's hand was halfway to his weapon when Marcus moved. Years of muscle memory and countless hours of training compressed into a single fluid motion that was over before the criminals even realized it had begun. Marcus drew his Sig Sauer with lightning speed, the weapon appearing in his hand as if by magic. In the same movement, he stepped diagonally to his left, positioning himself so that the three men couldn't target him without risking hitting each other. His stance was textbook perfect, balanced, stable, and ready for multiple targets. Weapons on the ground. Now, his voice carried an authority that came from years of commanding respect in life-or-death situations. The three men froze. The leader's hand was still reaching for his gun, caught in an awkward position that left him vulnerable and exposed. The lookout had started to draw his weapon, but stopped when he found himself staring down the barrel of Marcus's pistol. "I said weapons on the ground," Marcus repeated, his voice deadly calm. "You have 3 seconds to comply." The woman pressed herself against the ATM, finally, understanding that her unexpected rescuer was far more than he appeared to be. The way he held the weapon, his perfect stance, and the complete absence of fear or hesitation told her this man had done this before. "You don't understand, man," the leader stammered. "There are 3 of us, and only one of you." Marcus almost smiled at that. During his SEAL career, he had faced much worse odds and environments far more dangerous than a well-lit small-town street. 3 panicked amateurs with handguns were not exactly his most challenging opponents. "You're right," Marcus agreed conversationally. "There are 3 of you. That means I have to be very careful about which order to engage you in. The lookout first, since he's already reaching for his weapon. Then you, since you seem to be the decision-maker. Your friend there gets to go last, and think about his choices while he watches what happens to you too." The precision and matter-of-fact way Marcus outlined their potential destruction sent chills through all 3 criminals. This wasn't bravado or empty threats. This was a professional assessment delivered by someone who clearly knew exactly how to execute it. The lookout slowly raised his hands, his weapon forgotten. Look, man, we don't want any trouble. Then you picked the wrong evening and the wrong victim, Marcus replied. Weapons on the ground. Final warning. The leader finally realized that his hand was still reaching for his gun. He very slowly moved it away and raised both hands. Okay, we're cool. No problem here. Actually, there's a problem, Marcus corrected. You threatened an innocent woman. You attempted to rob her. And now you're trying to convince me that you're the victims here. The third man, who had been silent throughout the encounter, finally found his voice. We'll just leave, okay? No harm, no foul. The girl is fine. Marcus's expression hardened slightly. The woman has a name. She's a person, not the girl. And you're not leaving until the police arrive to sort this out properly. You can't hold us here, the leader protested, some of his earlier bravado returning. This isn't legal. You're not a cop. You're absolutely right, Marcus acknowledged. I'm not a police officer. I'm something much more concerning for people like you. The woman, who had been silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke up. Thank you, she whispered to Marcus. I thought they were going to... You're safe now, Marcus assured her without taking his eyes off the three men. What's your name? Sarah. Sarah Mitchell. Sarah, I need you to step away from the ATM and move toward that streetlight over there. Keep your phone ready to call 911, but don't make the call yet unless I tell you to. Sarah nodded and carefully moved to where Marcus indicated. She was amazed by how calm and in control he remained. Even with three dangerous men in front of him, he seemed completely relaxed. The leader of the criminals was getting desperate. Look, we made a mistake. We'll apologize to the lady and walk away. No need to involve the cops. The time for walking away was before you cornered an innocent woman and demanded her money, Marcus replied. That ship has sailed. The second man suddenly bolted. He turned and ran toward the alley between two buildings, hoping to escape in the confusion. Marcus tracked him with his weapon, but didn't fire. The man wasn't an immediate threat to Sarah or himself, and Marcus wasn't going to shoot someone in the back for running away. However, he also wasn't about to let the remaining two men think they could follow their friend's example. Anyone else feeling athletic tonight? Marcus asked the remaining two men. Both shook their heads vigorously. Smart choice. Your friend just turned a robbery charge into evading arrest and abandoning accomplices. His night is about to get much worse when the police catch up with him. The leader was sweating now despite the cool October evening. Where are you, man? Some kind of cop? Military? Marcus considered the question. His military service wasn't exactly a secret, but he preferred to keep a low profile in his civilian life. However, given the circumstances, a little truth might help resolve the situation peacefully. Former military, he said simply, and I spent a lot of years dealing with people who thought they could intimidate and hurt innocent civilians. The remaining lookout seemed to shrink into himself. Navy, something like that. The leader's face paled as understanding dawned. Oh no. Oh, no. We picked the wrong guy, didn't we? Marcus remained silent, but his slight nod was enough confirmation. Look, sir, the leader's whole demeanor changed, respect and fear replacing arrogance. We didn't know. We made a huge mistake. Please, we just needed money for her. For what? Marcus interrupted. Drugs? Gambling debts? Or did you just decide that taking money from a young woman at gunpoint seemed like a fun way to spend the evening? Neither man answered. Sarah watched this exchange with fascination. The man who had appeared from nowhere to help her was clearly much more than a simple Good Samaritan. The way the criminals reacted when they realized his military background told her she had been rescued by someone very special. Marcus made a decision. Sarah, go ahead and call 911. Tell them we have a robbery attempt with suspects detained, and that one suspect fled toward the alley between Main Street and Oak Avenue. As Sarah made the call, Marcus addressed the two remaining criminals. You gentlemen are going to sit down right where you are and wait for the police. You're going to keep your hands visible at all times. You're going to remain calm and cooperative. Is this understood?" Both men nodded and slowly sat down on the pavement. "Good. Now, while we wait, let me explain something to you. The woman you terrorized tonight is someone's daughter. Maybe someone's sister. She was just trying to get some cash for whatever normal, innocent thing she needed money for. She wasn't hurting anyone. She wasn't threatening anyone. She was just living her life." Marcus paused, letting his words sink in. "You decided to change that. You decided to make her afraid. You decided that your wants were more important than her safety and peace of mind. That was your choice." The leader looked down at the ground, unable to meet Marcus's eyes. "Now you get to live with the consequences of that choice. And trust me, gentlemen, the consequences are just getting started." In the distance, the sound of sirens began to grow louder. The Cedar Falls Police Department was finally responding, though the situation was already well under control. Marcus smiled grimly. The real education for these two criminals was about to begin when they discovered that threatening innocent people in a town protected by a former Navy SEAL was one of the worst mistakes they could possibly make. The first police car arrived within minutes, followed quickly by two more vehicles. Chief Rodriguez emerged from the lead car, his expression serious until he saw Marcus standing calmly with his weapon lowered but still ready. "Marcus? What's the situation here?" Chief Rodriguez knew Marcus well. They had shared many conversations over coffee at the local diner, though Marcus had never mentioned his military background in detail. The chief had always suspected there was more to the quiet hardware store owner than met the eye. Attempted robbery, chief. 3 suspects, 2 in custody here, 1 fled toward the alley between Main and Oak. Marcus's report was crisp and professional, instantly telling Rodriguez that his suspicions about Marcus's background were correct. "You armed, Marcus?" "Yes, sir. Concealed carry permit is current." Marcus slowly reached into his jacket and produced his permit along with his military ID card. Chief Rodriguez examined both documents, his eyebrows rising when he saw the military identification. "Navy SEAL. Former," Marcus corrected. The chief nodded slowly, understanding immediately why the situation was so thoroughly under control. "Well, that explains a few things. Sarah, are you all right?" Sarah had been standing near the streetlight, still holding her phone and watching everything with wide eyes. "Yes, sir. Mr." She realized she didn't know her rescuer's name. "Thompson. Marcus Thompson. Mr. Thompson saved my life. These men were forcing me to withdraw money, and when I couldn't get more out of the ATM, they said they were going to take me somewhere else." Chief Rodriguez's expression hardened as he looked at the 2 men sitting on the pavement. Both were now handcuffed by the arriving officers and looked thoroughly defeated. "We caught the runner," Officer Martinez reported as he approached the group. "Found him hiding behind a dumpster about 2 blocks away. He started talking the moment we found him. Says he wants to cooperate fully and that this whole thing was the leader's idea." The leader looked up sharply at this news. "That's not true. We all agreed to." "I'd save your breath," Marcus advised. "Your friend already threw you under the bus. Might want to think about getting a lawyer instead of making things worse." Chief Rodriguez pulled Marcus aside while his officers processed the scene. "Walk me through what happened." Marcus gave a concise but complete account of events, from his initial observation of the crime in progress to the capture of the suspects. His report was clear, factual, and professionally delivered. "You did good work here, Marcus. But I have to ask, why didn't you just call us first?" Marcus considered the question seriously. "Time and distance, Chief. You're 15 minutes out on a good day." The situation was escalating rapidly, and I assessed that the victim didn't have 15 minutes. Rodriguez nodded. It was exactly the answer he would have expected from a professional. "Your threat assessment? 3 amateurs, probably first-time offenders based on their operational security and panic responses. Armed but untrained. High probability of violence due to inexperience and escalating stress levels. And your response? Minimum necessary force to neutralize the threat and protect the victim. De-escalation when possible, but ready to escalate if they forced the issue. Chief Rodriguez was impressed despite himself. Marcus had handled the situation exactly as a professional law enforcement officer should have, but with the calm confidence that came from much more dangerous experience than small-town police work typically provided. "The DA is going to want to talk to you," Rodriguez said. "I'll cooperate fully with the investigation." Sarah approached them hesitantly. "Mr. Thompson, I just wanted to thank you again. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there." Marcus's expression softened as he looked at the young woman. "You don't need to thank me, Sarah. I'm just glad you're safe. But you risked your life for a complete stranger." "What?" Marcus thought about her question for a moment. "I spent 8 years in the military fighting to protect innocent people I'd never met in countries I'd never seen before. Why would I stop now, especially when the innocent person is right in front of me in my own hometown?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "You're a hero." Marcus shook his head. "I'm just someone who was in the right place at the right time with the right training." Officer Martinez finished processing the suspects and approached Chief Rodriguez. "All three are talking now. Apparently, they drove here from the city specifically to target our banks because they thought small-town people would be easier victims." Marcus snorted softly. That assumption didn't work out too well for them. "The leader is asking if he can speak with you," Martinez continued. "Says he wants to apologize." Marcus looked at Rodriguez, who nodded. They walked over to where the leader was sitting in the back of a patrol car. "You wanted to say something?" The man looked up at Marcus with a mixture of fear and respect. I wanted to apologize. Not just to you, but to the lady. We never meant for anyone to get hurt. But you were willing to hurt someone," Marcus pointed out. "You brought weapons. You cornered a woman alone. You threatened her. Intent and outcome are two different things. I know we screwed up bad. But when you said you were military, Navy SEAL, man, we had no idea what we were walking into." Marcus studied the young man's face. He was probably no more than 25, with the look of someone who had made a series of bad decisions that led to this moment. "Here's the thing," Marcus said finally. "You didn't know because you never bothered to find out. You saw what you thought was an easy target and decided to take what wasn't yours. You never considered that your victim might have family, friends, or community members who would protect her." The man nodded miserably. "The military service is irrelevant," Marcus continued. "What matters is that you chose to prey on innocent people, and there are always going to be folks who won't stand for that. Next time, you might run into an off-duty police officer or an armed citizen, or just someone with a baseball bat and a sense of justice." "There won't be a next time," the man said quickly. "I swear, this was stupid. We just needed money and thought." "You thought wrong," Marcus finished. "Actions have consequences. Tonight, you learned that lesson the hard way." Chief Rodriguez closed the car door, and the patrol vehicles began to leave with their prisoners. Sarah had given her statement and was preparing to leave as well. "Mr. Thompson," she called as she reached her car. "If there's anything I can ever do to repay you, live your life," Marcus replied simply. "Don't let what happened tonight make you afraid of the world. There are bad people out there, but there are a lot more good people. Don't forget that." Sarah smiled through her tears. "I won't. Thank you." As the last of the police cars disappeared into the night, Marcus found himself alone on the quiet street once again. The excitement was over. The criminals were in custody, and Cedar Falls was back to being the peaceful town he had chosen for his retirement from military service. He walked back to his hardware store, secured his weapon in the safe, and locked up properly. Tomorrow, the whole town will be talking about what happened. His quiet, anonymous life was probably over, but he found he didn't mind as much as he thought he would. As he walked home, Marcus reflected on the evening's events. He had left the Navy hoping to never again face situations where violence was necessary. But when the moment came, his training and instincts had kicked in automatically. He realized that some things never really left you. The commitment to protect others, the willingness to stand up to bullies, and the understanding that good people had to be ready to confront evil when it appeared. The next morning, Marcus opened his hardware store to find a line of customers waiting outside. Word had spread quickly through Cedar Falls about the previous night's events. But instead of treating him like a celebrity, his neighbors simply wanted to shake his hand and thank him for being the kind of person who would step up when needed. Mrs. Henderson was first in line with her usual Tuesday shopping list and a fresh apple pie. "For a hero," she said simply, pressing the pie into his hands. "I'm not a hero, Mrs. Henderson. Just a neighbor who was in the right place at the right time." "Maybe," she replied with a knowing smile. "But you're our neighbor, and we're lucky to have you." As Marcus went about his day, helping customers find the right tools and hardware for their projects, he realized that he had found something in Cedar Falls that had been missing from his life, a community worth protecting, and the knowledge that he could still make a difference when it mattered. The three criminals would face charges of attempted robbery, assault, and weapons violations. The one who fled would face additional charges of resisting arrest. Their lawyer would argue for leniency based on their youth and lack of prior records, but the prosecutor was confident of convictions. More importantly, they had learned something that would stay with them for the rest of their lives. There are people in the world who will not stand by and watch innocent people be victimized. Sometimes those people are trained professionals with the skills and courage to back up their convictions. It was a lesson they would never forget, and one that might just save them from making similar mistakes in the future. As for Marcus Thompson, he continued to live quietly in Cedar Falls, running his hardware store and helping his neighbors. But now everyone knew that their peaceful town was protected by someone who had proven that when push came to shove, Navy SEALs really never backed down.